And let us start Aphorism 10. Aphorism 10 is going to be about another dichotomy, uh, common theme again. Nietzsche's going to bring up a dichotomy, reevaluate it specifically by inquiring as to which impulses give rise to the philosophy that gives rise to this particular dichotomy. So let's look at it. Uh, the eagerness and subtlety, I should even say craftiness, with which the problem of the real and the apparent world is dealt with at present throughout Europe, furnishes food for thought and attention. So this is the dichotomy, the real and the apparent world. Um, and he who hears only a will to truth in the background and nothing else cannot certainly boast of the sharpest ears. And this is the critique, the psychological critique, which is to say that if you asked a philosopher why they were pursuing their philosophy, if you asked Kant why he was so concerned with the difference between the apparent world and the true world, his answer might be, well, the will to truth is of the utmost importance. Philosophy is the queen of the sciences, right? So Nietzsche's saying, well, maybe not. He's saying more distinctly, definitely not. There's more at play. There are more impulses driving this particular type of philosophy. And we'll see why in a second. So, now he's going to ramble on a bit. I'm just going to read. In rare and isolated cases, it may really have happened that such a will to truth, a certain extravagant and adventurous pluck, a metaphysician's ambition of the forlorn hope, has participated therein. That which in the end always prefers a handful of certainty to a whole cartload of beautiful possibilities. There may even be puritanical fanatics of conscience who prefer to put their last trust in a sure nothing rather than in an uncertain something. So right here, he sort of touched upon common mistakes he sees in modern philosophy, specifically modern German philosophy. Let's look here. So ambitious metaphysicians have constructed these systems that rely on certain prejudices that Nietzsche is here pointing out. That which in the end always prefers a handful of certainty to a whole cartload of beautiful possibilities refers, I think, to Descartes, right? Descartes' primary metaphysical ambition was to devise a system that was absolutely certain, like mathematics was. Kant is going to inherit a similar type of philosophical ambition with respect to his synthetic and analytic a priori claims. They prefer absolute certainty. In fact, they demand it. They think it's required that you be absolutely certain in order for your philosophy to have strength. Nietzsche disagrees. In fact, he's going to say something along the lines of, the only things that we can really be absolutely certain of are basically just truisms. They're the least interesting philosophical positions you can have. They aren't foundations of systems. They are just boring. So what we end up with, as he's going to say, are we end up throwing away the baby and ending up with purified bathwater that has no life in it. So let's look here. They prefer to put their last trust in a sure nothing, cogito ergo sum. What does that even mean? Does that change your life in any way? No. It is certain. It's as certain as 2 plus 2 equals 4. But it's not meaningful. So, they would rather put their last trust in a sure nothing rather than an uncertain something. But that is nihilism and the sign of a despairing, mortally wearied soul. So Nietzsche's making a huge claim here. The father of modern philosophy was a mortally wearied, nihilistic soul. And all of the German philosophers who adhere to and inherit his prejudices, his beliefs, and his instincts are also probably similar to that. Kant in particular. So, that's a huge critique. Anyway, it seems, however, to be otherwise with stronger and livelier thinkers who are still eager for life. So what they do is they sublimate their desire for life into philosophy, along with a whole bunch of ressentiment and other mess as well. In that they side against appearance and speak superciliously of perspective, in that they rank the credibility of their own bodies about as low as the credibility of the ocular evidence that the earth stands still, and thus apparently allowing with complacency their securest possession to escape. For what does one at present believe in more firmly than in one's body? This is a very common theme in philosophy, for philosophers to doubt the senses, doubt the bodily sensations and impulses and desires, and instead prefer the purified notions in the mind. What they do is they create dichotomies, dualisms that split the world into, uh, for Plato, it was between the pure realm of the forms and the earthly realm of change and flux, or the body. And its senses and the mind, it is pure apprehension and reason. For the Vedantas and Indian philosophy, it's the difference between the Maya, or the appearance of things, and the truth in and of itself, or the pure world beyond appearances. For Schopenhauer, he inherits a similar dichotomy. The world is the will to life in all of its brutal pain and agony and suffering. There's only one kind of escape from that, which is through art and transcendence. The transcendental world is a dualistic world, in contrast to the world of the will to life. Descartes: the body and its senses cannot be trusted. Only the mind can be trusted. Is a dualism. Mind-body dualism. Kant: there is the noumena and the phenomena. The world as it appears to us, and the world in and of itself. Again, dualism. Nietzsche is not a dualist, as it were. He's pointing out and critiquing all these dualisms because he thinks they are refutations of the world. They are denial of the world, and an attempt to replace the world with a purified notion of it that has no substance or has no life. Substance is a bad word there. A lot of philosophical baggage there. Anyway, back to the quote. Yeah, so he's saying they've given up their trust in their own body, which is to say they've given up their trust in themselves, because you are your body, right? To doubt your body is to doubt yourself, and that is not good. So, it is better to simply understand what the body is doing, not to doubt it. Who knows if they are not really trying to win back something which is formerly an even securer possession, something of an old domain of the faith of former times. What are they trying to win back? Naive beliefs, and the comforts that accompanied naive beliefs. Beliefs in the afterlife, beliefs in the eternal soul, beliefs in God. There was a certain bliss that these beliefs temporarily gave us, so long as we were capable of believing in them. But Nietzsche's going to say that the modern world, in all of its scientific vigor, and intelligent individuals who inherit the scientific method, are going to be utterly incapable of believing in these silly notions. And thus, they're going to feel as if they've lost something special, when in reality, what they've lost was a delusion that gave them a little bit of happiness. So, these philosophers, having lost their respective gods, are trying to resurrect their gods through the certainty and absolution of science, of philosophy. And what Nietzsche is saying is that they haven't thoroughly critiqued the desire for absolution itself, specifically the desire for absolute certainty itself, because absolute certainty is a more modern notion of the absolutely good, all-powerful triple G God that the ancient philosophers gave birth to. I meant to say triple O God, as in omniscient, omnibenevolent, and omnipotent, or the definition of each of those terms would be all good, all powerful, and all knowing. Such a God, I think, is impossible to believe in. An all-good God would make a much more decent world to live in that was less harsh. I think much less harsh than the world we live in, like, giving children cancer for whatever reason, volcanoes erupting and eliminating entire cities. It's very sloppy work. One of the core ideas Nietzsche harks on about is that nature is cruel and indifferent. Any God that would give birth to a cruel and indifferent nature would have to be almost equally cruel and indifferent, or have some other weird idea in play. I don't know. But regardless, such a God we don't believe in. Triple O God. So Nietzsche is basically just alluding in this paragraph to the possibility that underneath the desire to construct the type of philosophical systems and divisions and dualities that the philosophers in Germany have since Descartes, one is likely operating based off of desires and ambitions that are independent of a simple or pure will to truth. Nietzsche thinks that philosophers are reacting in a reactionary fashion from the loss of God, and the obscure and abstract metaphysical systems that we see in Descartes and Kant, and then eventually in Hegel, are going to be, in their methodology, in the way that they operate, life-denying, reactionary. What they ultimately are trying to resurrect is a divine solution to life, basically, or a cognitive or philosophical solution to life, instead of studying life as it is, precisely because we and those philosophers have such an issue with what life ultimately is. We've never really come to terms with it. I think a fundamental part of Nietzsche's philosophy is precisely this: coming to terms with the quote unquote crueler or indifferent or uh, bad from a human perspective aspects of life, in order for us to then accurately build our philosophies in response to this on top of these natural foundations. And at the core of Western philosophy, Nietzsche believes, is an inability to truly come to terms with the world, to accept the world as what it is, and to understand what the philosophical project ultimately is, which is, say, a creative one, not a replacing one, or philosophy isn't meant to metaphysically discern absolute truths. That's just not what it is capable of doing. Uh, and if it is capable of doing that, in an instance, it's only with truisms or unimportant ideas. So, yeah, basically that. 10 was a brutal, sloppy aphorism. I'm going to just move on from here. So, yeah, thank you for watching. Let's go on to 11.